Okay, we'll go ahead and talk about generalization. This is chapter 14. Okay, so when we talk about generalization, this means that, again, we're trying to generalize the findings of our study to a wider population. And how easily can we do that? Um, our collective understanding, okay, this is generalizing across people, sex, and gender identity. So just as an example, so generalizing across people. Our collective understanding of sex and gender has evolved, as has the language around these topics. We usually talk about sex in regard to biological classification. Apologies, uploading a previous video. Gender, on the other hand, it's a sociocultural classification shaped by cultural and historical forces. Um, and then the term gender identity refers to an individual's personal and psychological experience of gender. So that's kind of how we currently conceptualize those. Race, social categorization in humans, usually based on skin color, maybe some other physical characteristics. There's no science of human behavior that can be complete without considering this critical identity as well. And these are some demographics that you might include in your study. Ethnicity, that would be nominal in nature. Ethnicity is how a person belongs or identifies with a population or subpopulation with a common cultural background or even descent. So in research, it's important to not necessarily overlook these variables of interest, and it's important to collect data from diverse samples and report your results accordingly, or report any limitations as well. Then generalizing across people, we have culture. This is going to be the set of behaviors, customs, values, beliefs, culture, language, and expressions of a social group. A lot of the research that has been conducted up to this point has been conducted on Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic cultures, weird cultures. And so as a result of that, it's really not appropriate to potentially um, generalize the findings of these studies to, I apologize, the siren's going off because it's 11:30 on a Wednesday and my dogs are howling, so I'm very sorry about that. I promise they are okay. But it would be unfortunate or inappropriate to generalize the findings of these studies to Eastern, less educated, non-industrialized, poor, and non-democratic cultures. So if we want to understand human behavior, we have to understand it across and among cultures. And much of the research on culture centers on identifying similarities and differences in personality and other psychological characteristics and how those from different cultures respond to the same environments as well. So in regard to generalizing across people and different types of people, we need to be able to, again, high levels of generalizability is a high level of external validity. If we can't generalize our studies, that indicates that there is low external validity. As we talked about prior to, non-experimental designs are going to be more generalizable and have higher levels of external validity than experimental designs, which are going to have less generalizability beyond the participants in the study and thus lower external validity. So the external validity, again, how much can we generalize the results of our study to other populations or other environments? Also, we need to note that individuals who participate in psychological research are usually selected because they're available, and most available population is usually college students. So that's where we kind of get the most commonly researched group is like 18 to 24. But here's the thing, it's a highly restricted population. There's going to be young with social and political attitudes that are in flux because you're kind of trying to figure out where you belong in the world and who you are. Again, those that are enrolled in college probably have high cognitive skills. Um, and they're more similar to each other than adults are similar to other adults in the general population, which is going to indicate there's not a high level of generalizability. And so that can be a threat to external validity. Then volunteers tend to differ in various ways from non-volunteers. So again, you might have people that are like, yes, I'll volunteer in your study. Those who are willing to volunteer are going to have different characteristics than those who are not. What they've found is volunteers are going to be more highly educated, usually have a higher socioeconomic status. They're looking for approval, and they're more social. again, they're willing to reach out or take part or talking to somebody who's conducting a study. And the location where participants are recruited, it can also impact the study's external validity. Are we recruiting people at the college? Are we recruiting people at a mall? Are we recruiting people at a fast food restaurant? That is also going to impact how generalizable the study results are. We do find online samples can be more diverse than, again, the typical college sample, but they're still not representative, so there's still generalization issues because if you are collecting data from an online sample, that's great, and you might have diverse perspectives and people from all over the country, different races, ethnicities, genders, sexes, individuals, different gender identities. But you're also only going to be collecting data from those who have an online presence, those who do have the technology skills to be online. You're probably not collecting data from a lot of individuals who are 90 or 95 years old. Um, or those who are just not as technologically savvy. You might be collecting data from individuals in a more urban than rural area because of Wi-Fi access. So that's going to limit the generalizability as well. And most research with non-human animals is done with the expectations the findings can be generalized to humans. Basic research with non-human animals, it's important because the research problems that are addressed require procedures that cannot necessarily be done with human samples. So again, I'm not necessarily pro this, but uh, experimenting with like certain shampoos to see how they would affect animals, which could then possibly be generalized to humans in regard to its safety. Also generalizing across situations. The artificiality of the lab setting, that's part of the reason it limits the ability to generalize the observations in the lab to something out in the real world. But the use of a pretest, that can create external validity problems as well. And in most lab research, only one experimenter is used. And again, we talked about the potential influencing characteristics of experimenters, what their personality is like. Are they charismatic? Are they closed off? Are they grumpy? Are they happy? Gender identity and experience as well. Then we have replication. So that's why the procedures, the methods and procedure sections of your reports are so important because you are creating a detailed recipe for somebody to replicate your study. It's a way of overcoming problems of generalization occurring in a single study because if somebody replicates your study, possibly with another population or another sample, this would increase the generalizability of the overall findings. You could have an exact replication. So this is when somebody would attempt to precisely replicate exactly what you did procedure-wise and methodologically wise in your study. And then a conceptual replication. And this is when somebody might use different procedures to replicate a research finding. So to show a similar effect, but they take a different route. So assessing external validity via literature reviews and meta-analyses. So in a literature review, which you will have kind of completed by this time, a reviewer, again, they're going to research lots of studies on the variables of interest that address, again, that topic. And you write a paper summarizing and evaluating the literature, compare and contrast the results, compare and contrast the methodologies and the procedures and the data analysis. It provides information, again, it summarizes what has been found in general. It lets the reader know the findings that are strongly supported, and again, others that might be weakly supported or even refuted. You can also point out inconsistent findings in areas that there may be gaps or research that's lacking or should be conducted in the future. And then also discussing, again, based upon what you found, potential future directions for research. And then we have meta-analyses. This is when the researcher is going to combine the actual results of a number of studies. Again, maybe there's 20 studies that have been conducted on a specific topic. That researcher is going to collect all of the data from all 20 studies and then statistically analyze it and come to and obtain results and interpret those results as an overall picture of the studies that have been completed on that topic. One of the most important reasons a meta-analysis can lead to clear conclusions is the meta-analytic studies focus on effect size, which we talked about. Is there a large effect of just world beliefs on belief in conspiracy theories? The analysis is also going to show comparisons of the effect sizes in different types of studies to allow tests of hypotheses. And the example here analyzed the effectiveness of psychotherapy delivered remotely for children and adolescents. So, what was the effect of psychotherapy done remotely on children and adolescents, and what was the effect size of that? And that was a meta-analysis completed by these researchers to determine an overall kind of conclusive result. Some meta-analysis findings for the effectiveness of, again, remotely delivered therapy, the overall relationship across all of the studies that were collected in this meta-analysis. The effect size was a moderate effect size of 0.47. Again, you can look at the target problems in regard to how effective the remote psychotherapy was for ADHD. There was a negative relationship in that as psychotherapy continued, ADHD got a little worse. Anxiety, you can see a really strong effect size. As same with conduct disorder. As remote psychotherapy continued, these problems got better. Depression, there's a very small effect size. So, in regard to therapeutic provider contact, again, the effect size was large in comparison to less contact, showing that the effectiveness of this therapy is it's has probably it has a moderate effect size. So, using research to improve our lives. Again, the social sciences have become more diverse in perspectives and practices. We've started to move toward an inclusive and diverse science of humanity rather than, again, that weird science. So we're trying to study diverse populations in order to develop more generalizable findings and approaches to phenomena and problems. Zimbardo, who had his own issues within his research, described psychology's continued commitment to giving psychology away. Psychological research impacts all areas of our lives, health, education, work environments, and many others. And we've made significant contributions in regard to even multicultural guidelines or even in the APA Code of Ethics. Again, it's very conclusive and diversity based, making sure that everybody's perspective matters. So, with that being said, if you are still tuning into all of these lectures, I just want to tell you that I appreciate everything you've done this term, all the work you've put in, and if you have any questions or need anything in the future, know that I am always here for you and here to support you in every way, shape, and form. And I just hope that you have a great remainder of the semester and great day.